I'd like to take this opportunity to call the regular meeting of the Westfield School Board for the month of October to order. We do have a quorum this evening, and we have a few folks in the audience, so welcome to all of you tonight. Thanks for coming out. First item on the agenda is a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you please stand. If you'll please face the flag and recite with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. You can have a seat. Next item tonight is the superintendent's report. So, Sherry?
Sure. So our guest presenter this evening is Dr. Chase Stinson, and he is our Director of Student Services, and he has a presentation prepared for the board this evening.
Thanks for having me this evening. I appreciate it. I don't want the girls to get too thrilled over here and angry to see your mom, so I'll try to keep it extra exciting. Tonight I'm going to talk more about what we do as a district, and when you see the term response to intervention, you really think about everything instructionally, whether it's social emotional learning or academic learning that happens in our schools. So when we think about response to intervention or response to instruction, what is RTI? It's a framework. It's a framework that we've built at the district level and then at the building level that really talks about prevention and early intervention for students that aren't making progress that sometimes we would think at the tier 1 level. And I'm going to show you some examples of the pyramids of how we build in services and programs in a few slides from now. But it's really just that framework. It's the framework and it's the data that we use to help make decisions as we address students' services. And that tier 1 piece, essential components, everything's research-based as far as how we prescribe interventions. It's a problem-solving methodology, meaning each building has a team, and we have a district team that consults with one another, whether it's a triad, whether it's a team, or whether it's a grade level team. We talk about NWEA, ISTEP, any assessments that might be happening, classroom-based performance, grades, etc. Just anything that you can think of at the building level, at the classroom level, as it relates specifically to progress, students making progress not only academically, but socially and emotionally. Response to intervention, if you think about it as a puzzle, it starts with that 3-tiered model that I'm going to show you in just a few minutes. Performance measures, which are the universal screening. In Westfield, we use NWEA, which I know the board's very familiar with, but we use a secondary measure called Ames-Webb. So if a student is not hitting growth targets consistently or performing at maybe a grade level, performance level in the classroom, we use assessments called Ames-Webb for math and language. And we use that so we can more frequently monitor a student's progress that's maybe struggling a little bit, so we can adjust instruction and not waiting until the next cycle for NWEA. Because we use NWEA 3 times a year, and that's not a lot of data points out of the course of the year for a student that maybe we're prescribing specific instruction or prescribing a specific intervention. The problem-solving piece are those building-based teams. Every building has a building-based response to instruction, an MTSS team. The MTS is that multi-tiered support system, and that can be both academic or social emotional learning. And the 4th piece are the interventions. So we know we have a problem. We know we have students maybe not making adequate progress as it relates to Ames-Webb, NWEA, or ISTEP, or classroom instruction somehow. So assessments within the classroom. That's that building-based team that's prescribing specific supports to a student through other modes outside of Tier 1. And the Tier 1, when you look at the model, the Tier 1 is that piece that most of the time all students in the district are receiving. So the Tier 1 where you see that 80%, that's kind of the model, that's the framework. If every student, as it relates to curriculum instruction, and that's more what Carrie and Lynn do in the district, all those classroom components that every kid's getting every single day, from a math and a language literacy standpoint, those core academic areas. And we measure that by does our tier 1 meet the needs of 80+% of the students in the district? So when we look at that from a district standpoint, we're looking at the data, and it's 80+%, you can make the assumption, or you can make the hypothesis, I guess, that they're having enough. That curriculum instruction piece for tier 1 is very solid. Database, or it's solid across a grade level. Or if it's first grade but not second grade, how do we adjust that? And then the tier 2 are those services that a student might receive to intensify or be prescribed a specific intervention to get those extra services and supports that are outside tier 1. So they might be in a one-on-one instructional opportunity before or after school, during the day, or a small group. It might be prescribed a specific intervention to help get them back to close the gap or remediate. I know you've heard that term, remediation, from time to time. So trying to get them back to grade level with their peers and then back down to tier 1 so that they're in that regular flow of what's happening from an instructional standpoint, whatever grade level or classroom they might be in. If the tier 2 piece isn't working, and we're still monitoring with NWA, we're still monitoring with Ames Web, we're still looking at classroom performance, that might go to a referral to that building-based team from there. And that building-based team might be looking at a very specific intervention plan as it relates to academics, as it relates to social emotional, with a timeline, but also very specific prescription of interventions that might be available. So we typically at that tier 2 level are looking at an 8 to a 10-week timeline of supporting the student with additional interventions outside of the tier 1. Again, the tier 1 is that great big umbrella that all students in the classroom receive every day, grades K through 12. If the data team or the response to instruction team meets, and we're looking at that data sometimes weekly, maybe monitoring or assessing the student at the end of every week with Ames Lab, if that student's still not making that progress within that 8 to 10 week window, we might look at, okay, what else is going on here? Do we need to make a referral potentially for students that are special services of some kind? And at that point, we would look at maybe looking at specific referral special education services. That's that tier 3. That's typically the most intense piece that we would have as far as assigning a teacher of record, a teacher of service, who works outside the classroom and inside the classroom to serve that student with maybe similar interventions, but the frequency and the duration is more intense. Just trying to, again, remediate and get that kid back to grade level as quickly as humanly possible. That piece with the special education services, with Article 7 and IDEA, it really captures a pretty wide range of services and opportunities for students, so that's certainly different with every referral. But our district has done, Westfield has done, and our building-based teams have done a great job understanding the difference between a student needs remediation and maybe a student that needs special education services. So that's the tier. I guess if you don't walk away with anything else today, is understanding this pyramid, knowing that tier 1 is what every kid every day, Monday through Friday, gets when they walk into the classroom, whether it's a special, whether it's language arts, whether it's social studies or science. The tier 2 is they might need a little extra support. They might need a little bit of extra support, whether that's during a specials time, how they're building that in so that they're not missing core academic time. That's another piece that we really focus on as well. And then the tier 3 are the special education services. Again, we measure the tier 1 by 80+% of our students is the curriculum and instruction. Curriculum instruction piece is that solid at tier 1 before we'd ever want to start thinking about beyond that for students. And then this really goes into the splitting it. At the building level, we have the academic side and we have the behavioral side. It's still the same pyramid. It's still using the same percentages to look at how successful it is each tier. Really just split down the middle on one side being academic and one side behavior. I know you've heard Dr. Gray talk a lot about SEL. That's one of the pieces right now on the behavioral side that we're working on from a tier 1 standpoint. So our buildings, actually we meet Thursday again as a district team, and we're really looking at tier 1, what does it look like in every first grade classroom from a social emotional learning standpoint? every first grade classroom should have these components from the tier 1 as it relates to social emotional learning. Every fourth grade classroom, if you go to Shamrock Springs or you go to Maple Glen, should look and feel from a social emotional standpoint the same. And then again, from academic, it's the same way. We're prescribing supports. Is there a behavior intervention plan that might be needed for a child that involves the counselor, that involves a special person in the building, that maybe a prescription of positive behavioral supports might be needed to help that child with a particular behavior, so that we're extinguishing the behavior. We're not serving the behavior, but we're working towards extinguishing those behaviors through positive supports, and that's the MTSS piece as well. The tier 1, which we just talked about, that's the universal piece. That's all the core academics, the core programs that every student gets and receives, regardless of where they fall into that pyramid. The tier 2 again is about that 15% of the students. It's really 10 to 15%, and then the tier 2 and 3 can be anywhere from 15 to 20% of the total student body. With about 7,800 students, is that where we are? You can see that that's a pretty good group of students that we're still serving outside of that tier 1 from a student services standpoint. I think we're at about 1,000 students, K through 12, that have an IEP, that receive some kind of special support, and about 350 students whose primary language is not English, and we serve them through an ILP. Those students would fall in these extra support areas as well. And then the tier 3, the top of the pyramid, again, the special services programs, the special education teachers, the speech and language pathologists in every building, maybe occupational therapy, physical therapy. There's also school psychologists in every building that help with these assessments as well. And then if you look to the right, those are some of the specific interventions that we prescribe to students outside of the tier 1. So again, outside of what you think about the plan and Harry do for us in the classroom, these are just a few of the extra pieces that we might prescribe at the building level through the team meetings to help prop up kids, help them mediate, and get them back to grade level and beyond. Any other questions? I know that's like a lot in a little amount of time, but again, like I said, if you walk away with one thing today, I think the most important thing to understand is, from a response to instruction or a multi-tier support piece, is understanding that what our goal is to serve every child's needs, regardless if they're gifted and talented, or if the child is maybe struggling, or a child that's primary language isn't English, or this just doesn't fit exactly into the box. We're not just writing IEPs and ILPs for students. We're also writing individualized intervention plans for kids that maybe you hear all the time about these kids that maybe fall through the crack. Well, we're trying to, as a building, to better understand behavior. We're trying to better understand the academic piece and why kids are not meeting their academic goals or their social emotional goals, and writing individualized plans for those kids too. So from both sides of that MTSS system, how we can better serve individual students that might be struggling in one area or another. And that's really what response to instruction and MTSS is all about, is a framework to help support every child, regardless of what their needs are. Questions about RTI, MTSS, anything specific? I know we have some experts in the room.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
On the, how does someone get, so NWA, they all take it, whatever,
That's
third
the
year.
tier 1 screener.
Right.
Yeah.
So how does someone qualify for Ames Web?
If that's a really good question. Actually, I was just talking to Dr. Gray about this before we started. The Ames Web piece might be something that if a student's not making progress in the classroom based on classroom performance, that's not hitting their growth targets with NWEA, that we're using every week on the student, because we're at that point we're prescribing specific supports. So if we're prescribing specific supports that are outside of tier 1, the building-based team would collectively get together, use that NWA data, and prescribe Lexia learning, Lexia reading, and connected math, so whatever it might be to support the student. And to make sure when we prescribe that, we want to frequently monitor that path for the child, so that we're not waiting until the next NWA winter assessment, that we can react instructionally and look at that data every week. So the Aimsweb's really just is a really a frequent, maybe even a weekly assessment piece that we can look at to say, is the SRA connected map working? And adjust accordingly. So if we go 2 weeks and we're not making any progress, we need to go back to the table and really think, was this the right prescribed intervention for that student? So it's consistently not hitting their growth targets in NWEA, then we start looking at that Aimsweb assessment. So the difference between the assessment and the intervention is really how that works. So it just allows us to very quickly take a look at how fast that student's moving along progress, from a progress.
Yeah, one more question.
Sure.
On the 8% tier 1, there was one side that was academic, the other side was behavior, and coming up with these standards for all the different grades, which I
Sure.
think is awesome. Is there going to be is there an easy way to measure whether that's successful?
Well, we use NWNI to look at that along with.
So on the academic side, but on the behavior side.
Oh, on the behavior side, how are we measuring?
Yeah.
Well, recently we've implemented an assessment called DESA, and I know some of us are familiar with that. That's kind of our NWEA for the social emotional learning. And the DESA is that quick screener, and then again, some of us in the room used this before, to take a look at social emotional health of students, sometimes non-observable behaviors. So really just taking a quick look at that. That's another piece that if you're seeing some inconsistencies, there's another piece of DESA that allows us to kind of turn that into Aimsweb, but from a social emotional where we're monitoring more frequently the students struggling in the social emotional area as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Are the 20% roughly, the tier 2 and tier 3, do those generally, is there a bell curve to that, or are they evenly distributed through all the grades, or is there historically a age or bracket that is the higher hit?
There is some cyclical pieces to that. Certainly, our classes are big enough now that you typically see a similar percentage, but it does vary, and sometimes there's an outlier. Like one class is much heavier, maybe in need than another from a services standpoint. Again, both sides of the pyramid. I can remember a couple classes that seemed like they were a lot heavier as far as overall percentages. But from the district, when you look at the district numbers, it stayed pretty close to that. I think we're actually higher than the 80, which is good. That's, again, the national framework. Those are recommended suggestions. If you're dipping below that 80%, it goes back to the question of how effective is your core instruction and curriculum. And go back to that question, whether it's maybe not the kids, it's more the system. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I know Marcy knows all about this. Questions from the audience or not? I appreciate your time. And
Thank
if
you.
you ever have questions, or if you want slides, or if anything comes up later, you want to email me, feel free. We'll be glad to answer questions.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Chase.
you.
Thanks, Chase.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes approval of the minutes from the last regular board meeting, board work session, and various claims for the month of September and early October. So I will entertain a motion.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
I have 2 seconds. All right. You can pick one, Jill.
Got it.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, personnel, Chris.
Good evening, everyone.
Chris.
You'll see the updates in red, a few updates. One thing I'd like to make note of that's on here, I believe the first time, you'll see we have a position where we have some teachers that are covering the media center at the middle school.
Yeah.
And that's really a really neat program we have that allows students to stay after school and do some extra work in the media center. So I appreciate Ryan and his staff kind of coming up with that idea, along with many others there. I think it's just been very beneficial. Ryan shared with us the number of students that have been participating. It's a very good percentage of students that are taking advantage of that opportunity there in the media center. So we appreciate that. And then also after hopefully approval, I'm going to have Dr. Great introduce one of our newest directors to the district as well.
Okay.
So with that, I just ask that you approve personnel as listed this evening.
Thank you. Had a chance to look at that. Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve personnel as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second. Any questions for Chris? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving personnel as listed signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And back to you.
Sure. I'm going to actually turn over to Dr.
Sure.
Sherry.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce Mrs. Marcy Dorado, and she's with us this evening. And so Marcy is currently the assistant principal at Monon Trail Elementary School and has been an assistant. Last year she was doing dual roles. She was assistant principal between Monon Trail and then also Shamrock Springs. And with the board's approval tonight, Marcy is going to be our new director of early learning. And we're really excited about this because as we've talked about looking to the future of our SSP programs, and then also looking at early learning and talking about possibly having all of those younger children together in one location, Marcy comes with such a great skill set to be able to be the leader for that program. And so we're so excited to have her as she can kind of start blazing the trail for this new position, and I think she's pretty excited about it too.
First, I just want to say thanks to my mom and my dad and my sister and my daughter and her friend for coming. It was really nice. I think they're proud of me. And I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. I'm really looking forward to getting started and moving forward with the program.
Great.
Thank you.
So we posted the position, Marcy's replacement. It'd be hard to fill Marcy's shoes, but once we get that person in place, then we'll look at a transition period for Marcy this fall at some point. With the position.
Congratulations.
Great. Congratulations, Marcy. Let's see, next, no old business. First item under new business, Chris, you got a big
Back
chunk
at
of
the policies.
Yeah, you got half a
There we
page.
go, yeah.
We're getting to the point that a lot of policies, and you'll see them coming in the next few months, not the meatiest of the policies, just kind of going through those as we have. So this is just the first reading.
Okay.
So no action tonight, just feel free to take a look and let me know if you have any questions.
Look like quite a few of them are consolidations and
Yes.
eliminations.
It's been kind of nice, deletions, consolidations. As you can see, there's a lot of notes in the margins. Just
Right.
We tried to have Church or Chittle-Antrim put as many notes to say, hey, this isn't going away, it's just going here.
Right.
So just so you're aware that we're just not getting rid of things and it's a free-for-all. It's just being placed some other places.
My binder's getting lighter. Okay.
Yeah, who needs an evaluation?
We'll be sure to keep reviewing those between now and the time we take action. So thanks to you and to Church and Lanantry.
And quite a few too, is you
Yeah.
have either put in handbooks or in
Right.
departments. So
Right.
they're there, it just doesn't need to have a policy that's connected to it. And
Right.
as always, you approve those handbooks, so it'll still come to you to see that information.
Great. The next item is the crisis manual. So I'll stick with you.
Sure. So this is the annual update required by the state. We need to report to the state within the first 60 days of the school year that we've reviewed our crisis manual. This is done in connection with the local authorities, police department, fire department, and reviewed that as part of our, and also our safety committee. So just asking that, no major changes, just really some personnel changes. Our processes have stayed mainly the same with those. So just asking that you approve this document and give me the ability through our safety committee to make changes as necessary as they come up during the school year.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the crisis manual as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions for Chris?
Is this available on electronically as well as?
We don't publicly have it electronically just because some of the
Just
safety,
GPS.
it is on a drive where it's available to our administrators and employees.
Okay.
And obviously,
So you get the little file and then you plug it in.
Yeah, so, and the administrators all are required to sign off on reviewing this to our safe schools
Okay.
as well. But it's not necessarily a public document
Oh, yeah.
that's out there publicly for some things, but it is available to our employees and
Okay.
do that.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the crisis manual as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item. Chase.
Yes, Title III grant, it's our federal EL grant. This year is $34,323. And our NESP, which is the state grant, is $50,500. Both are supplemental grants to help support EL students and staff, uncertified staff, software, supplies, and materials. Asking you to approve both.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the Title III and NESP grants as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions? How do those amounts compare to prior years?
NESP actually went up significantly. It was similar to Title III last year.
Okay.
So we had about a $16,000 boost with the NESP, the state dollars.
Okay.
And I've seen the same kind of trending with our special education services with the state dollars
Good.
going up and the federal dollars staying fairly flat. Not sure why. It's just kind of the trend we've noticed.
Just happy to hear the word up in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's good. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the Title III and NESP grants as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item, Brian.
All right, 2018 budget, we have a couple different resolutions, so I'll just kind of briefly overview them, explain them, and if you have any questions, let me know. The first one is just the Form 4, which is the budget approval. It's identical to what we presented last week, or last month, sorry, for just a little over $95 million for the budget this next year. So the first resolution then is the authorization of pension bond tax neutrality. So basically, whatever our pension bond rate is, we have to offset somewhere else in our budget. So this year, we are recommending the CPF plan. Part of the reason that is a change from past is because we are also asking for the transportation levy appeal, so it doesn't look good to ask for more money in one spot and then also ask it to be knocked down as well. So that's why we're choosing CPF this year. Next resolution is the reduction of line 1 or 2 when the 1782 comes out. So basically that just gives us the ability to fluctuate those numbers a little bit with where we ended our cash balance versus what's advertised today when we have real numbers. Usually there's not much of a tweak there at all, but it at least gives us the ability to. Next one is resolution authorizing the deposit of CPF fund interest into the general fund. This just gives us permission that all the interest generated by our bank account will go into the general fund. It's usually not a whole lot after the fees offset it, but you know, pennies count. Next one is authorizing the use of temporary interfund loans as needed for cash flows. Just gives us the ability to do any interfund loans between the funds as the year goes. We would not end the year with any loans outstanding amongst ourselves. It would all flush out, but if we needed to for cash flow reasons during March or April or then August, September, we could give ourselves a loan between the funds. And then the next one is petition to appeal for the 2018 Transportation Operating Levy Maximum Levy. So what we are going for this year is your transportation fund is a set levy and you can't go above that. So there is a process to appeal it similar to as you did with the bus replacement levy last year. So we are looking to move forward with that process. The first step for us is to have the resolution approved. The DLGF has not released their packet of paperwork yet that we have to submit. So we will submit this tomorrow if it's approved to let them know that you guys have approved us to start the process. Then once the paperwork comes, it'll actually be Mr. Veerhoff and myself sitting down and cranking out some paperwork. Got 2 more. The next resolution is the adoption of the bus replacement fund. And then the last one is the adoption of the capital projects fund, which were both presented in your packet last month as well. That is all 2018 budget.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Well, it looks like since they're sequential, we get the opportunity to make one motion if we so choose. So I'll leave that to the board to make a motion or a series of motions.
I move to adopt 2018 budget resolutions, all of them as presented.
Thank you. I'll second. And to clarify, that'll be resolutions 2017-14 through 2017-21, in case there's some question about that.
Thanks.
Any questions or comments for Brian? Certainly appreciate your diligence and diving right in the short time you've been here to kind of get this stuff,
Been fun.
get your arms wrapped around at least a little bit, and you know, we appreciate certainly fresh set eyes too that haven't been exposed to our figures and our processes. It's nice to have another set to go through and see what other improvements and changes we can make. So thanks for your efforts. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the budget-related resolutions 2017-14 through 2017-21 as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item, Brian.
All right, the next item is the fiscal year 17 CTE grant dollars. There's 13,000. Compared to last year's, I believe it's about even from what we received last year as well. The only note that I'll list that was in the items for consideration part is funds cannot supplement the funding, and the dollars have to be used for new or increased investments for CTE funding as we move forward. So, I ask that you approve this.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the CTE Innovation and Advancement Funding as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the CTE Innovation and Advancement Funding as presented signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item, Dr. Great.
Okay, so we have some school calendars to bring before the board this evening for approval. So over the course of the last year, we've had a calendar committee that's been working very closely together to look at very different components of the school district's calendar. We really wanted to be able to look not only look into next year's calendar, but look another year ahead so that we can always be planning ahead. While we do not have every single component of the calendar here tonight in the recommendation, we have the core structure of the calendar that would allow families for planning and then also for instructional planning. So the two calendars, the 2018-19 calendar, 2019-20 calendars have been included in the board's packet. And another piece of information was that we had provided a parent survey that went out right at the very end of the year, and that the feedback from that is posted on the website. So really what you see in these calendar recommendations is a compilation of feedback from surveys, feedback from the individuals on the calendar committee, and then really trying to create a calendar that really is in the best interest of students. So we're really trying to think about the students in their learning. So a couple of things that I would point out that we would be coming back to with the board or for the calendars. We did not establish graduation dates, and part of that has to do with we also need to be looking at a backup location as our class sizes are getting larger for graduation. We want to make sure that we have possibly another option besides the high school gym or inside so that our graduates can have an adequate number of guests from their family to come and see their graduation. A couple of other things that we're still working through, we want to be able to build in professional development time for teachers. And so we know that continuous learning is not only important for our students, but it's important for the personal and professional growth of our staff. And another component that we're focusing on, we want to be able, we're going to be doing kind of a bell-to-bell study to look at the start and end times of the school day. So typically you see those times at the bottom of the calendars, and those are not included at this time. What we want to be able to do is we want to be able to look at times that address the developmental stages of our learners, that take into consideration the necessary instructional minutes that we need at the school day for elementary, intermediate, middle, and high. We also want to look at our transportation department capacity. And then also, we want to look, when we look at our main campus, we want to take into consideration any kind of traffic congestion, especially with the upcoming construction that we're going to have. And then finally, we are in the process of beginning to focus on developing an e-learning plan but we are by no means at all ready to say, let's do e-learning tomorrow. So we want to really be able to think about that strategically. And so when we get those components, ready to go for a recommendation, we'll bring those back to the board. But tonight, I would just like to propose that the board approve the 18-19 and 19-20 calendars as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Great. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2018-19 and 2019-20 as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion?
Is there an anticipation as to when the other pieces might be? Will they be ready before the first calendar comes?
Oh, sure. You mean before, like?
Yeah, before
they-
these calendars start.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. So, for example, we would like to be able to have further discussion just even about the school. We're gathering some data right now, but the discussion about the school day, the start and end times, we'd like to be able to incorporate that into our November board work session. And then really what we're trying to do with the professional development time is we're trying to see, okay, the state does have a waiver. Do we qualify for that waiver? If so, what does that give us as far as any kind of leeway that we can use as far as days? Or do we need to look at, for example, like an hour delayed start, once a week or once a month? So those are the kinds of conversations, but we would definitely have those, I'm hoping even maybe like by January, February.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing I wanted to say is I absolutely went back to the survey, the parent survey, just to see how it matched up. And I was really pretty impressed because it got everything in there. There was one piece that was a little controversial, and it was 50-50 on the survey, and you had to pick one. And it got picked. But everything else, so 75% of the survey, at least from what I read, was addressed within the new calendar. So I want to compliment the committee and
Absolutely.
the work that you did on that, because last time we dealt with that, it was a big deal, and I think this one is much better aligned with what the community has asked for. So
I
thank
agree.
you for that.
Well, I think not only the result, but to your point, Dan, I know you like process, but just the overall process
Yeah.
of how this was developed. I mean, the inclusion of building a committee and making it a little more transparent. Obviously, you can't please everybody, so it's just the best compromise you can come up with that hit all the parameters that not only were a part of the survey, but more importantly that the state requires. I think I'm sure it's unanimous. Schools generally start way too early and run way too late, but when you got to hit 180 days, there's only so many ways to get there. So I would echo what you said and certainly give kudos and appreciation to the committee for what they did in bringing this recommendation forward. So thank you to them, and thank you to you for leading it.
Yeah, and it only took you 5 minutes to present it, but I know it took you. So it was really good.
Well, and we know that once again this year, a bill will be introduced to not begin school until after Labor Day. So if that happens, then of course we'll be changing our calendar,
Yeah.
and so will a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments, questions, thoughts? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the 18-19 and 19-20 school calendars as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Jill, any cards?
No.
All right. Our next regular school board meeting scheduled right back here, November 14th at 7 o'clock. Look forward to seeing everyone there. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before we adjourn, I just wanted to publicly thank Chris for presenting at the Indiana School Board Association meeting. It was very well received. Lots of people came up and asked what was happening at Westfield Washington schools, and I thought you did a great job. So thanks for representing the school district very well.
Appreciate your support. Thanks for being there and being a part of it. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
I move we adjourn.
And a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Aye.